Hello, welcome. Let's discuss some important things about anti-tuberculosis drugs. Okay. Uh, as we all know, Mycobacterium tuberculosis is a slow-growing acid-fast bacillus which resides in the cells. It's an intracellular organism which resides in the macrophages and has got a lipid-rich cell wall. The problems in the treatment of tuberculosis include number one, the microorganisms develop resistance if you use a single drug. That's why we are forced to use multi-drug therapy, and the organisms persist in the deeper tissues which are called as persisters, and the drug penetration may be difficult. It may be difficult for drugs to reach uh, to those organisms, and there are strains which have developed which are resistant to multiple drugs. And with HIV disease, the incidence of tuberculosis also has gone up. So these are some problems in the treatment of tuberculosis. uh, when we are supposed to classify the anti-tuberculosis drugs, they are classified as first line drugs and second line drugs. So that's a very typical concept. uh, we'll understand it. It's simple. First line means what? First line means standard, or the most essential drugs, most useful drugs, which are also called as primary drugs used for tuberculosis, and these are most commonly used. And the second line drugs obviously are reserve drugs. They are not very commonly used. They may be used less commonly because uh, they might be producing certain adverse effects, or some of them might have been used in past and now they are discarded. We might use them again if needed, or they are used in cases of resistance. So if with primary drugs we get resistance, we are likely to pick up from the secondary drugs. So in general, first line drugs are essential, primary and standard drugs, most commonly used, and second line drugs are reserve drugs which are comparatively less commonly used. So when we classify anti-tuberculosis drugs, they are classified as first line, second line, and we also need to remember if the drug is static or cidal. If the drug is bactericidal, it's going to kill the microorganism, and a static drug is just going to reduce the growth. More the number of bactericidal drugs we use in a combination, the patient is likely to become non-infectious earlier, which is quite important. And second important thing is, if there are more cidal drugs in a therapeutic regimen, then the total duration of the treatment of tuberculosis is likely to come down. So that's why it's important to remember whether it is static or cidal. So the classification will go as first line cidal, first line static, second line cidal, second line static. Okay. So first line cidal drugs, rifampin or rifampicin, isoniazid, pyrazinamide, and streptomycin. These four are the first line cidal drugs. And there's only one static drug in the first line, that's ethambutol. Second line, drugs are obviously large in number. Because the organisms are developing resistance, we are searching drugs which could kill those microorganisms, resistant microorganisms. So we know all these drugs actually. Fluoroquinolones is fluoxetines, levofloxacin, ofloxacin, ciprofloxacin, moxifloxacin, etc. Then aminoglycosides, amikacin, capreomycin, kanamycin, rifamycins, rifabutin and rifapentin. And two more groups. One is macrolides, clarithromycin and azithromycin, and a newer drug called linezolid. Second line static, there is cycloserine, ethionamide, thiacetazone, which is comparatively an option, a choice which is less expensive. And one of the oldest anti-tuberculosis drugs is called PAS, para-aminosalicylic acid. In addition to this, clofazimine, which is an anti-leprosy drug, is also useful as second line anti-tuberculosis drugs. So this is the classification as first line cidal, first line static, second line cidal, second line static. If you see this slide, I have separated macrolides and linezolid in the second line cidal by a line, and also down at the bottom clofazimine. Why did I separate this like this? Because there are some authors which mention these drugs as third line drugs. So now if you see the bottom row here, I have shown macrolides and linezolid and clofazimine as third line drugs. And there are some newer drugs, bedaquiline and delaminate. So if you want to show it as first line, second line, well and good. You can show it like this as we have shown in this slide, the earlier slide, or you can show first line, second line, and you can add this as a note as third line agents. What are we going to discuss on today's session? Most important thing is the adverse effects of anti-tuberculosis drugs, and they always ask you, we must know at least few important adverse effects of most of the anti-tuberculosis drugs. And let's remember that most of the anti-tuberculosis drugs are hepatotoxic. So if the patient is at the same time suffering from hepatic failure, treating this patient might really become very difficult. Let's start with rifampicin. Adverse effects, first important thing to remember is it gets excreted as a colored metabolite, and it goes into most of the secretions, and that's how the secretions get high colored or orange red. So everything, all secretions, urine, feces, saliva, sputum, tears, sweat, even contact lenses can get stained, can get colored, and the patient might complain later that I'm having blood in urine or so. So we need to instruct the patient beforehand that rifampin can do this and this is harmless. Next group of adverse effects can be remembered as three syndromes. Abdominal syndrome, which has GI symptoms like nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain. Respiratory syndrome, where mainly there is dyspnea, there is breathlessness, shock and collapse. And lastly, skin changes called as cutaneous syndrome, where there is itching, that's pruritus, flushing and skin rash. And the third group of symptom is comparatively rare. One is hepatitis and cholestatic jaundice. So again, I'm reminding you that rifampicin is also hepatotoxic. And lastly, if intermittent rifampicin therapy is used, rarely you can get flu-like syndrome and renal failure or nephritis. So the last two, which are mentioned in blue color, they are rare: flu-like syndrome and renal failure or nephritis. I need to tell you that rifampicin must be given early in the morning on empty stomach. See the bottom last line. Because food decreases the absorption of rifampicin to a great extent, almost 85%. So rifampicin is always given early in the morning on empty stomach. Next important pharmacokinetic character is rifampicin can induce, means can increase the number of hepatic microsomal enzymes, CYP3A4 system, which is supposed to metabolize number of drugs, and which most importantly include oral contraceptives and oral anticoagulants and antiepileptics. So if there is increased metabolism of these drugs, then there will be decreased effect of these drugs. So if a lady is receiving rifampicin and oral contraceptives, then there can be contraceptive failure. So this is one important drug interaction to be remembered. Next is isoniazid. Isoniazid, most important adverse effect it produces is it depletes, means it decreases the levels of vitamin B6 pyridoxine inside the body. In fact, it excretes pyridoxine, vitamin B6 from the body, which leads to peripheral neuropathy, and the patient may complain of tingling and numbness in the hands and feet, and paresthesia, heaviness in the feet and in the hands. And due to B6 deficiency, there can be anemia and there can be skin changes. We always give 5 to 10 milligrams of pyridoxine every day whenever we give isoniazid to the patient, and this is to prevent the peripheral neuropathy. And second important thing is isoniazid produces hepatitis and hepatocellular damage and necrosis, so liver damage. So I'm just reminding you, rifampicin, isoniazid, both the drugs we saw hepatic damage, and for isoniazid most important is peripheral neuropathy. Then rarely isoniazid can produce one more group of symptoms, which includes SLE-like syndrome, systemic lupus erythematosus-like syndrome. Then you can see two or three P's there: pyrexia, psychosis, personality changes. So I always remember these as three P's: pyrexia, psychosis, personality changes, memory loss, and there can be skin rashes. And if INH is taken in large dose, then there can be seizures. Depletion of vitamin B6 rarely can produce optic neuritis and visual disturbance, but it's rare, so I put it down. And lastly, as we have seen, rifampicin was producing induction of the enzyme systems, Isoniazid produces inhibition of the hepatic microsomal enzyme system. So the drugs are not metabolized, their metabolism is decreased. So we get increased levels of anti-epileptic drugs, phenytoin, carbamazepine, ethosuximide. So there can be more adverse effects of anti-epileptic drugs if they are given for a long time along with INH, isoniazid. So that's the second important drug. And there is one typical thing about INH. Some of us metabolize INH fast, and some of us metabolize INH slow. You can see that slow acetylators and fast acetylators. This is called genetic polymorphism. Uh, those individuals who will metabolize INH slowly, INH will accumulate in the body, and it is likely to produce more adverse effects. For example, peripheral neuropathy can happen, or systemic lupus erythematosus (SLE-like syndrome) can happen with INH in slow acetylators. So rifampicin, INH. Now the third drug is pyrazinamide, and this is absolutely important to remember that pyrazinamide produces very serious liver damage and hepatitis. So if there is liver damage, if there is hepatic failure, pyrazinamide cannot be given. It is absolutely contraindicated. Secondly, it produces gastrointestinal intolerance or typical metallic taste sensation and a feeling of eructations. Then some drug fever, rash, and photosensitivity, and there can be red brown discoloration of the skin. And next, it can produce increased levels of uric acid, hyperuricemia, which can lead to symptoms of gouty arthritis. Not only this, it can also produce arthritis in multiple joints, polyarthritis, and joint pains and muscle pains, arthralgia and myalgia. So that's about pyrazinamide. Next drug, streptomycin, is an aminoglycoside, and as we all know, all aminoglycosides have three common toxic effects: ototoxicity, nephrotoxicity, and neuromuscular blockade. Ototoxicity is eighth nerve damage, vestibulocochlear toxicity, vertigo, and hearing loss. Vestibular toxicity is more than cochlear with streptomycin. Then nephrotoxicity, the typical nephrotoxicity with aminoglycosides is tubular necrosis and renal damage. And lastly, curare mimetic action, detuberculin-like action. So there is neuromuscular blockade or neuromuscular paralysis. Lastly, streptomycin crosses the milk barrier. Streptomycin can also cross the placental barrier and can go to the fetus. Uh, the next drug is a static drug, first line static drug, ethambutol. And ethambutol must be remembered for eye, that is optic neuritis, and visual disturbances, loss of visual acuity, visual fields, blurring of vision, central scotomas, that is blind spots. And this happens due to optic neuritis, retrobulbar optic neuritis. And the individuals can get color vision disturbance, and there is loss of the red green color discrimination and retinal damage. So all this is most important with ethambutol. Go to the last line of the slide. Ethambutol is not used in children. It's very difficult to differentiate if there is any changes in the visual acuity happening if the child is receiving ethambutol. So ethambutol is never used in children, and when the patient is put on ethambutol, the periodic eye testing is extremely essential, and we must monitor, we must keep a watch to ensure that the visual disturbances are not happening. Nextly, ethambutol can also produce hyperuricemia and gouty arthritis, which we mentioned for pyrazinamide. The last drug is a second line drug, and it's a static drug, thiacetazone. And the important thing, it produces gastrointestinal disturbance in the form of anorexia, nausea, vomiting. Secondly, it can produce skin rashes and skin disturbances and Steven Johnson syndrome. And thiacetazone is especially absolutely contraindicated in patients with HIV disease. It produces severe fatal skin reactions, especially in patients who are suffering from HIV disease. Next, thiacetazone can also produce bone marrow suppression. So there can be anemia or granulocytosis, and there can be renal and hepatic damage also. So we have gone through almost all the important anti-tuberculosis drugs and their adverse effects. The first line sidle drugs, rifampicin, isoniazid, pyrazinamide, and streptomycin. And the first line static drug was ethambutol. and I also considered one second line static drug, that's thiacetatone. So these are the adverse effects of anti-tuberculosis drugs.